and welcome to today's webinar. In this webinar, I'm going to make these pretty needle cases. I think they would make a lovely gift for someone that sews. Now, I can never find a hand sewing needle when I need one, so I think these are going to be really great. You can store all your hand sewing needles, your scissors, everything you need in one handy little pouch. So let's have a look at how we're going to make them. Now, today, I am going to be using the lovely 3 series. So this is the latest generation of the 3 series. I'm using a 335. It's a lovely little machine with loads of great features and functions. But you can make this project on any of the modern Berninas. They've all got similar features. Now, in this session, I'm going to talk to you about doing a hand look quilt stitch, which is a lovely stitch. We're going to have a look at using some of the decorative stitches. We're going to do some applique, and we're going to look at using the buttonholes in a more interesting decorative way. So we've got lots to get through today, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. Okay, what do we need for this project? Well, we need some felt, and I've got that in 3 different colours, some nice contrasting colours. I've got some stabiliser to keep everything nice and flat. We need some thread in contrasting colours and matching colours as well. And we've also got some monofilament for my hand look quilt stitch. We need that. Then I've got the normal scissors, fabric pens, pins. We also need some ribbon for the tie and some ribbon for the inner section. And to start off with, we need some card to create our template. Okay, the first thing you need to do is design your templates and work out where everything is going to go. So I knew I wanted a kind of a floral shape for this project. So what I did is I did an initial drawing and planned out where my stitches are going to go and where my, where the petals are going to go. Then I needed to work out the layout of the middle section, which is this section here. So that's where my tools are going to go. And that can vary depending on what you're putting inside it. You know, you could use this for holding makeup brushes, it could be for pens, or it could be a needle case that we're creating today. So what I did was I cut out a section of card and then I just laid out my tools. So I worked out where I wanted them to go and how big it needed to be. And then I marked where my buttonholes were going to be. So the buttonholes are creating slits for the ribbon to go in and out of. It's just a nice decorative effect. You could just do it by sewing them down, but I thought a buttonhole would be nice, and it looks quite cute on the back as well. So you need to plan where they're going to be. Just work out how long your ribbon is to mark, where the start and ends are going to be. I've also added 2 centimeters to the edge because I'm going to sew this in the seam, and I just need enough fabric to be able to do that. So that's how I worked out my design. I also marked out my leaf shapes because I need to cut those out, and I had a rough idea what my center size was going to be, and then I drew out my template. So, depending on what you're going to be making, you can adjust yours accordingly. Okay, so I've marked out my flower shapes, and I've put some stabilizer behind it. This is just stitch and tear. And I've cut out my petal shapes and pinned them down. So we're ready to move on to the next stage. So I'm using the 3 series, the new 3 series machine. It's a great little machine. I really love it. And it's got this fantastic screen, which means it's got packed full of loads of wonderful features. But one of the fun things I like about this machine, and you can do it on all the new Berninas, is if you go into Home and then you go into Settings and into Personal, you can change the colour of the screen, which I always think is quite fun. So I'm going to go for a pink screen, match my dress, and I'm going to go for, I think I'm going to go for some little dots. So we can come out of there, go back into sewing, and now we have a cute little pink screen, which is quite fun. Anyway, what we're going to do next is we're going to look at the hand look quilt stitch. Now, I know I'm not doing it on a quilt sandwich, I'm just doing it on my felt, but I still think it gives a really nice hand sewn look. So we're going to set up for this stitch. Now, for a hand look quilt stitch, what we need to have is monofilament on the top. So we put the monofilament on the top, and then we put a coloured thread in the bobbin. And what happens is we increase the tension, and then it pulls the bobbin thread up to the top, and it makes it look like you've done a little hand stitch. So we're going to set up for that. So the first thing we need to do is find that stitch. Now it's in my quilting folder, which is, this is a picture of a little quilt there. So I can tap there and it's 1304. Now, if I wasn't sure what a stitch was designed for, I can ask the machine. So I can go into question mark, tap on the stitch number and it tells me. So it's saying hand look quilt stitch and it's saying for imitating the look of hand quilting with monofilament thread. So really useful. So I can just come out of that. So I want 1304, tap on that, and then I need to set up. So on this machine, we have the horizontal spool pin and we have a sneaky vertical spool pin that actually pops out, which I think is quite cute. So that just pops out and you can push that into place. Now for my monofilament, because it's parallel wound, it's straight, I want it to stand up so it unravels and nice and evenly. So I'm going to use a foam pad, pop that on there. Then I'm going to get my thread and pop that on. And then can you see it just unwinds really nicely? And then I can just thread up. So I'm using a foot 20, an open toe foot, so I can see exactly what I'm doing. Also, I'm going to use the side as the foot as a guide quite a lot. So that's why I've got that foot on. But then I'm just going to thread up normally. So I'm just going to go through the back and round. I've made sure my presser foot's raised. It's a little bit more tricky with this thread, obviously, because it's see-through. Large needle bar, small needle bar, and then I can use my needle threader. So at this point I can lower my foot if I want, halfway down and round and just pop it into place, and that's threaded. Lift that up and then I can pull the loop off the back and just go through the foot. So take that to the back. I've already wound my bobbin with this lovely sagey colour thread, this Metla thread, so I'm ready to go there. Yeah, so I'm all ready to start sewing. Now I'm going to do a little test piece on a spare piece just to make sure everything is working well before I go onto my main section, onto my main leaves, because I'm just going to work around these. So I'm going to do that first and then I'm going to come back and we'll start sewing these on. Okay, so a really important thing with this stitch is that we increase the tension because we need to pull that bobbin thread up. So I'm going to take this right up to 8. But you can experiment with your thread and your fabric, what you need to do. But for this project, I'm going to go to 8. Okay, so we're ready to go. It's going to do a little starting knot. And then we're going to work our way around. So I'm just going to pivot my fabric round as I go. Just move those pins so they don't get stuck. Now when I get to the corner, I'm actually going to press pattern end so it just finishes where I want, and then I've got my needle down set, so then I can use my knee lift and I can pivot round and then I can start to sew the next side. Okay, so we're just going to do our final side of this leaf. So we've just pivoted and we're going to sew down. And then we're going to stop at the end with our knot. So press my knot button, do my little knot. There we go. Okay, and that's all my petals sewn down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew round the edge as well with the hand look quilt stitch, just to finish this section off. Starting off with a knot, I'm just going to hold my top thread, my see-through thread, as we start, and then I'm just going to whiz round the outside of my little flower shape. So this should look like I've lovingly hand sewn it. Just go back there. That's it. And then go round. Okay, so we're getting towards the end. I'm just going to try and get that to nicely line up, and then do a little knot. Make sure it's secure, doesn't come undone. And then we can just trim. Okay, in the next section we're going to stitch out this little central motif, which is made up of 4 little flower designs. So going to my machine, so I've changed my top thread from the monofilament to my coloured thread. This is a Metla Cerulon thread. And what I must remember to do is set my tension back to normal, which is where this little red line is. So we're all set up in terms of threading. We're going to keep the sagey colour thread on the bobbin. So if we have a look at the screen, I'm going to find the decorative stitch I'm going to use. So I need to go into my decorative folder, which is this little wiggly line here. And I know it's in the floral folder, floral group here, so I can tap there. And then I can scroll up, or I could pop the screen open if I wanted to, so I can have a better look at all the different designs, choose the one I want. Now, I know I want one stitch 1, 2, 3, so I can tap on that, and there we have it here. So again, I'm just going to have a knot to start, secure everything, and then I can stitch down. So this is going to do 2 little flowers, and then stop. Automatically, don't need to do anything, so it's automatically stopped. And I'm going to press my knot and just going to do a little knot to secure. Okay, so we're going to take that out of the machine and trim my extra threads. So that nice and neat on the back, give that a little trim. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to choose set to do 1 pattern repeat. So I'm going to go back up here, and I can just keep pressing. I can go up to 9 and then it goes back to none. So I'm going to select 1, just want it to do 1, and I can come out and I'm going to line it up so I've got my needle right in the middle. I'm just a bit far over, so I'm going to use my knee lift. I'm just going to get in the right spot, so I'm starting right in the middle. Okay, and then I'm going to press pattern begin, so I'm right at the beginning of that stitch, and then I'm going to stitch down. Just hold my threads. We have a bit of overlap, but I think it looks quite pretty. So it's going to do 1 and stop. Then again, just do my little knot to secure. And then I'm going to do the same the other side. Then I've got that really cute little central design. I think it looks like a little seed head. I'm pleased with that. So now I'm going to go and cut that out, and I'm going to add my frill round the edge. And then I'm going to come back to my machine and we're going to look at how we're going to blanket stitch that onto the middle of the flower. Okay, so I have pinned my middle section down and I've added a little frill to go around the edge. And what I'm going to do is blanket stitch this section down. Now on my machine is very clever, and it has a tutorials function. So if I go into home, I can see these 2 icons. I have tutorials, which is like a built-in manual, or creative consultant, which is really useful if you know what fabric and what technique you're going to use. But for the moment, I'm going to go into tutorials, and I'm going to go into my quilting techniques, and I'm going to look at blanket stitch applique. And when I go into this section, it gives me loads of great information on what to do, how to prepare, what needle, what thread, and what settings to use. And it's saying to use stitch 1309, and giving me more information, telling me to use foot 20, which I've got set. So it's always useful to go into tutorials and have a little look. I'm going to come out, go back into sewing, and then I want to go into my quilting folder, and it was 1309. Tap on that, and that's brought that stitch up. Now I'm going to use the edge of the foot as a guide. So what I want to do is move that stitch right over as far as it will go to the right. So I've moved that over and we're on position 5. Also, I found that the default is 2.3. That's a little bit wide. So with all these stitches, I can really edit and play with them if I want. So I'm going to take that down to 2, showing me there. And I've made a change, so it's gone yellow. I know I've made a change there. So I think I'm all set up and ready to go. I've got my needle down set, which is great if I'm going to pivot, and obviously I'm going to use my knee lift. So now all I need to do is get on and sew it. So you need to stop on the outside of the stitch, move any pins that are going to get in the way, use your knee lift to pivot, so we're all lined up, and then away we go again. So I think if you do a couple of stitches, because I'm doing quite a tight circle, and then turn, then that works best. Keep it all nice and neat. Of course, if you were doing this on a machine set like a 990 or a 790 Pro, you would have the wonderful laser to keep you all lined up, but I think we'll be okay. So I'm sewing my central section down and my frill all in one go. Having this knee lift just makes such a difference. I think I can just fit one more, so then I'm going to do a little knot. Great, okay. So that's that section sewn on. Oh, I think it looks really nice. And with this frill, you can either have it laying flat or you can, have it standing up. So I'm going to trim that. Okay, so that's the front done, and now we're going to have a look at the back, which I'm going to sew on this piece here. Now, to make it extra special, if it was a gift for someone, then you could add, if it was for a birthday, you could say happy birthday, you could put their name or a date on it, something like that. Today I'm going to just put made with love, and I'm going to sew that round the edge. So let's have a look at how we set that up in combination mode. Okay, so we're going to go into combination mode, and to do that we press the plus, and then it takes us into this separate section of the screen. Now the first thing I want to do is I'm going to program in a little leaf design that I'm going to use to go all the way around the edge. So I know that's in decorative, that's back into my flowery designs, and I can scroll up and find it. It's this one, 137. So when I tap on that, it enters one repeat of that design. The next thing I'm going to do is going to add my lettering, so I can go into my fonts folder here. Now this is great. On this machine you actually have 3 fonts, all with upper and lower case, which is great. And this script font is really, really pretty, so I'm going to tap on that. Now to enter lettering, it's much easier if I expand the screen, so I can press the little arrow there and that pops everything out and I can just see a bit better what I'm doing. So as I say, I was going to do made with love, so I'm going to go for a capital M. Then I'm going to go to my lowercase and do my made. Then I need a little space, so I go into characters and choose a space. Then back into my lowercase letters, I'm going to scroll up to find my W. There's that gone. Scroll down, made with, and then I'm going to put another space, and then I'm going to go back into lowercase and I'm going to do my L O V E. So we've got made with love. Then I'm going to add another little leaf at the end. So I'm going to go back into decorative, back into my floral folder. I'm just going to find that design, which is this one here, tap there. Now, if I'm not sure what I've put, I can always just scroll through and have a little look. If I'd made a mistake, I could delete. If I needed to insert something, I can. It's really flexible. It's great on this machine. So I'm happy with what I've put in. I'm going to press my little arrow. Now we've gone back and I've got 16 stitches in my design here. Now I want to make sure I'm at the start, so I pressed pattern begin. That was that icon that appeared in the middle. And I'm also going to make sure I only do this all once. I only want to stitch that out once. So I go into edit whole combination, which is the 3 boxes here. Just tap on that and press 1 repeat, because I want it to do the whole thing once. Then I can come out and I'm at the very top. So then I can stitch that out onto my fabric. So now we are going to do a little knot at the start and we're just going to stitch out our Made with Love. We're just going to pivot round so it curves round the side of the petal. So it's doing our knot, then it's going to do my little flower shape, and then we're going to go and do the letters. So you just need to try and pivot at a good point when you're sort of at the end of a letter. Then you can just gently pivot it round. It's great with this foot because you can really see exactly where you're stitching, and you know when's a good time to just twist it round. And it also shows you on the screen exactly where you are, so that's also really helpful with a little white dot. So I've done Made with Love. I'm just doing my little leaf and then it's going to stop. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close combination mode by just pressing the plus again. So we're coming out of it. I'm going to go back in and find that leaf design. And now I'm just going to sew all the way around the edge until I get back to the start again with the little leaf design. So I'm just going to use my knee lift to pivot a little bit and then off I go. So I'm coming towards a change of direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press pattern end and it will do one pattern and stop. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a couple of straight stitches just to get me around that corner. So I'm going to go into my my practical stitches and I'm going to select a straight stitch. And I've set it to 1.8, so made it just a little bit shorter. And then what I can do is I can use my needle up, needle down button just to move 2 stitches. Then I can pivot. And I'm just going to do 1 stitch in the right direction. Then I'm pointing in I'm going in the right way, and I can go back into my decorative stitches, just scroll up and find that design again, and then I can carry on going round until I get to the next change of direction. I'm just going to pivot round this curve. Okay, so now we're going to sew up and we're going to try and meet so there's not an obvious join. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do one more, see how that looks. I think I could probably get one more in. Let's do one more. Oh, I'm pleased with that. So I'm just going to do a little knot. And that's joined up. Okay, so that's that done. I think that looks really nice. And we've got our Made with Love. And as I say, that could be happy birthday, that could have been someone's name, whatever you want to put on there to make it extra special. I always think if you receive a personalised gift, that you really know the person that's made it has thought about you. So that's the back done. Okay, so I'm going to take the stabilizer off the back, just because we don't need that in there. And then I'm going to add another piece of felt on the back and sew round the edge. And I'm also going to insert the ribbon that we're going to use to create the bow to hold it all together. But I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so now I'm just going to sew some backing on just to keep everything nice and neat. And also this allows me to trap the ribbon in, which I'm going to use to tie it up. So I'm going to sew that in. Now, I don't want this line of sewing to detract from my hand look quilt stitch, so I'm going to do it in a matching thread just quite close to the edge, so hopefully you won't see it too much, but it'll just neaten everything up. So I'm going to go over to my machine. So this machine has a temporary memory, and it's remembered that I set my straight stitch to 1.8. Now I don't want that anymore. I want it just to be the default, so I can press clear and it goes back to the standard default setting. I also want to move my needle position over, so I can move that over to position 4. So I'm going to be nice and close to the edge of the foot. Okay, so we're just going to start off with a knot and then we're just going to stitch round. Okay, so that's that done, and then we just move on to the other side. Okay, so I've sewn around the edge and I've trapped the ribbon in, and I'm just going to go and cut these out, and then we can move on to the middle section. Okay, so I've cut my middle section of felt out on the fold, and I've marked where I need to put the start of my buttonholes, so they're all marked out there. I've changed my top thread to a pink, and I'm going to change my bobbin thread to a pink as well, so we're all matching. Because I'm going to sew my buttonholes, which are going to create the slits, I need to find my buttonhole foot. So with the 3 series, all your accessories come in this handy little pouch. So I'm just going to get my buttonhole foot out. So it's the same as on all the Berninas, foot 3A. So this foot, although it looks quite a big foot, it's quite easy to put on. You just put it on like any other foot. So I can just take my 20 off and just pop it. So you just pop it under, lift it up, and then you can bring the little clip down and that holds it into place. Then I can go into my buttonhole folder and I'm going to choose buttonhole 51. And again, if I wasn't sure how to sew a buttonhole, I could go into tutorials and it would tell me, but I'm okay for now. So I'm pressing buttonhole 51. Now I need to set the length of the buttonhole. So what I can do is, and I think this is really clever, I go into information and I press this icon here that's got a picture of a buttonhole with an arrow pointing up or down. I tap on that. Now, if I actually had a real button, and let's say for argument's sake my nail is, the button, then I can just place it over the yellow circle and I can use my width or length dial to increase that circle so I can see the yellow border around the edge, and that will measure my button. Now, because I'm using it creating a slit, I know that my buttonhole needs to be 25 mil long, and it tells me how long it is on the screen. So I can just keep going up until I get to 25, and it's going to add a mil either side. So that allows the thickness of the button, or in this case, the ribbon. So that's fine. And then I'm set, ready to go. So I think that's really clever and a really easy way to measure your buttons. So once I've done that, then I can just tap out and I'm ready to go. Oh, one thing I was going to say is, so this foot will allow you to do a maximum buttonhole of 30 millimeters. So I'm well in that with my 25, so that's fine. So now we're just going to go over to the machine and stitch those out. Okay, so I'm ready to sew my buttonhole. Now this is another occasion where my knee lift is great because I can just really just ease it down and get it right in the correct place. Now I need to line the top of the buttonhole up with this little red marker there, and there is actually a central line on the foot, so make sure that's marries up with the mark I've put on my fabric. Now because this is a complete sequence, it's going to do the whole thing and stop. I can actually use my start stop button, which is this button here. When you use your start stop button, make sure the speed control is just, is more to the left, so it's going to go slower. Otherwise, it goes at quite a pace and it can be a bit off-putting. So I'm sort of going, I've got my speed control there, and then I can just press and hold and away we go. Then all I need to do is keep it straight. So we have one beautiful buttonhole, and now I can just work my way along and sew the other 3. Okay, so that's the last one finished. That's all our buttonholes sewn. And we can just trim that off. Okay, so I'm just going to cut open these buttonholes so I can insert my ribbon in there. And once I've done that, I'll come back and show you how I'm going to secure it. Okay, so I've inserted my ribbon and I've just tucked it under there and neatened it. And I'm just going to sew a little line down there just to secure it in place. So I'm going to go and do that now. Okay, so that's that section finished. And now we just need to pin everything together and insert it. Okay, I've laid my sections together. So I've got the middle section inserted and I'm going to pin it all, and then I'm just going to sew down here just sort of discreetly to hold it all together, and then I can cut this bit away. So that's the next and the final stage actually. Yeah, so we just need to do that bit and then we're done. Okay, so I'm going to sew all 3 layers together, and it can be quite thick. So if you're dealing with really thick fabric, you can adjust the foot pressure by turning this dial. So I could just have slightly less foot pressure. So this is a great feature to have on machines, especially if you are working with thick fabrics. You know, if you are making some curtains or bag making or projects such as this, anything where you've got a bit of bulk, it's really good to be able to adjust that. So I've just done that a little bit just to help me sew the thicker section that I'm doing now. Okay, so that's all sewed together. Now I'm just going to trim away this excess and then put my tools inside, and then I think we're done. Okay, we're all done. We've made our little needle case, and I think it looks really pretty, and I'm sure it would make a lovely gift for someone. So we've used lots of different techniques in this. I'm really pleased with it. I think we've put our little 3 series through its paces and it's come out really well. So we've got a little ribbon holding it together, and then we can just undo it and it opens up, and there we are, it's holding all our accessories. And as I say, you can adapt that to whatever you want to put in it. So I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar, and if you've got any questions or any comments, we'd love to hear from you.